All right, hello everybody, and welcome on back to some Minecraft musings. Happy Sunday! I'm your host A-Rye, and yeah, quite a Sunday. Actually, real quick, let's go see what's new. So, been doing a lot of work on that thing. I don't think I've shown much of that recently, and then uh, it's gonna be a bit of a spiritual musing today. So, of course, we have the little forest that I'm building over there to try to golden up the land a little bit. Because I've been playing a lot of Fortnite, and we're in the Greek mythology season or chapter, whatever it is. My kids can always tell. I have a hard time keeping that straight, but there's chapters and there's seasons. And I think chapter is like the year, and then each season is like the seasons within the chapter, which is kind of counterintuitive because usually a season is like a year, like an annual season of play, like for sports or like for TV shows. Like you're watching which season of Breaking Bad, like oh which I've actually already started watching Breaking Bad again because I just finished Better Call Saul for like the 20th time. So, and I still catch things that I didn't see the first time. I don't know, it's weird. And it's not like I'm just sitting there watching them. I use them as background noise often when I'm doing stuff like this, like building these extravagant temples and all that good stuff. But anyways, and then I guess a little kind of backstory for those that don't know me. I generally try to work in the what ifs, like try to live my life in ways that what if God really existed? What if all that? And I hate it because it's so cringy, and I hate like just being like that wide-eyed tilt your head to the side like because God said so. Like no, that's psychotic. Like I'm having conversations on Facebook right now with some people that it's pretty interesting. We'll get to that here in a sec. But first, I want to show you my ofrendas. So, and I'm still figuring this one out. So, did have these represent people. Yeah, sorry, I had to like remember what these even meant. These are deceased people, friends and family. This is family. Well, basically, like my best friend's dad, my dad, my ex father-in-law now, and then try to remember. You can see that's why I got like, yep. So that's my high school buddy that was on the football team that passed away from a drunk driving accident. His drunk driving, but I mean, it's still sad. And then this one, I went to my first concert, not even with him. I went pre-partied at his house, but he was a good buddy. Um, I had T9 and KMK. It was Tech 9 and Cottonmouth Kings concert, but um, yeah, that's what it is. Welcome to Jamrock. There you go. I was gonna say yeah, because we used to listen to a lot of Damian Marley, cruise around BV, just chilling. And then we've got the twins here. First time I ever saw a PS4 was at their house, and that's just like I'll always remember that. And I have extras here, so as soon as I remember some things, I'll put them up there, and then see, we might go into all of that. Yep, these are two former lady friends we dated, and now they're dead. They're gone. So, at least from this plane of existence. And I hate this. Yeah, really good coworker, and I'll remember here soon. I mean, like, and there's still some that I haven't gotten up here, but the whole idea was, I really like the idea of like some Latin cultures of the ofrenda during Dia de los Muertos, and it's where they build an offering or like an altar of like, here's all your favorite stuff. So in case there is a ghost or a spirit or some way, or if this is a simulation, and they're sitting there watching the computer program run, they can come and hang out and be like, oh yeah, this is my friend's dad. He was in the Marine Corps, and like a really good dude. And then, well, this guy, actually, all of these were military men too. Ex-father-in-law was actually a GS 12, I believe, and that's like I looked at the rankings the other day. It's like a medium level uh, in the government something like there's GS levels and like I think at least and this is from Google so it might not be right but this is like 1 through 7 was the beginner entry level, and then once you got ranked to an 8 to 12, I think it was, you're a middle level, and then 13 to 17. And again, I could be completely wrong. Apologies to all my military friends and family. And then there's other things too. I don't even know. Like my mom was like a well lieutenant. I mean, but in the anyways, we won't go too far into that doxing and all that. But you know, I don't even know why. I think just out of respect for her, she doesn't like to people to know her, so that's okay. I'm a little leery about doxing myself, but I mean, whenever I talk about like my kids, my location, all that, eh. the majority of people watching these aren't going to be watching for a few years, and then it's not going to matter much. And then even still, I have full faith in law enforcement, the alphabet agencies, all the things that we have, the prevention measures. I mean, not like complete. I still worry like school shootings and all that, but like as far as creepy people and stuff, like I'd like to think that enough of us are keeping each other accountable that that's going to become less and less, and like kidnappings are just going to go away. So, anyways, let's talk about Facebook. So I really try not to get into philosophical discussions on the Facebooks because it's my face, and that's like I want to keep that kind of clean. I used to be very political on there, very pro-democrat, like offensively so. Like, and thankfully I've calmed down from that. Had enough people tell me like, "Hey, you're kind of a little wide with that one." Like, I had one friend tell me that, well, just call me out on something that wasn't true about Trump, and she was like, "As much as I hate him too, let's keep it civil because we expect them to do the same." And that's true. Like, we can't just be re-sharing things without doing a little due diligence and checking them. I don't know. And even then, everything needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Like, I mean, the biggest example, like, so Trump, if you don't like him, usually there's the whole Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, getting 2 billion from the Saudis. Well, I looked into that a little more. It wasn't that he just got a present of 2 billion. He got paid 2 billion for his position, and that money was meant to go to relations, Middle East relations, actually, to ease the tensions a bit. And it is a very big concern. I think everybody can agree that the Middle East is like the last bastion of ick in this world. Well, that in Africa, sorry, and I hate to generalize with Africa. There's still a lot of conflicts and inequality and harshness, like the Lord of War, like a lot of that movie. I mean, there's African warlords, and again, it's such a massive continent that the problems of one country can vary very greatly from the next country over. So I mean, same could be said about the U.S. Like the problems even in Mexico are not the same problems as the U.S. And same with like when I was down in Costa Rica. Costa Rica is considered one of the more like wealthier, like well-off places, and Nicaragua was one of the more poor. And they had their own immigration problem with Nicaraguans coming over the border. And then they had to have walled off walls around their houses because like people would just come in and steal from their house, or and that happens everywhere. And a lot of times, I want to say it's probably more likely influenced with alcohol. And that, I'm not saying that we need to just ban alcohol altogether. No, we need to legalize cannabis worldwide to provide a viable alternative, or at least just to kind of cut down on the numbers. Because people will do what they want. If they're having a hard time in their life, they might go get drunk and like go do some regrettable things or whatever. I mean, I'm not justifying it, but I'm also not going to be like, oh no, Dios mío, I'm so surprised like that this would happen. It's so stupid. Like, I mean, and not to say that people are stupid that do that. It's just that the fact that we still do that, and we even feel stupid when we do that. It's like, how could I be so dumb and vain or whatever, and like, because otherwise you're living in the life of like constant paranoia and like, oh, I better make the best decision, and then it gets to the point where it's not even like you can't really even like live life enjoyably. In fact, let's go get some more emeralds and see if he's still there to get more flowers, so we can add to the bee area. Which needs to happen. More yards need to be turned into gardens, basically, so pollinators can travel a lot better, survive a lot longer journeys, and yeah, all sorts of good things. So let's go ahead and we have a bunch of this. So, but the thing on the Facebook, so I'm part of this group that's very heavy MAGA. It's very heavy Republican. There's a lot of religion in there, and then every now and then I see a few people jump in there and just like intentionally try to upset the people of the group. And then there's a bunch of political back and forth and all this. And right now we're talking religion because there was this post on Mother's Day. Today's Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to everyone. I've already said Happy Mother's Day to the three mothers that are closest in my life, and and well, one will get her present when she gets back. But anyways, um, no. So like, it's just funny that on Mother's Day of all days, this guy posts this picture and it's this two panel. It's like, um, uh, in fact, let me go ahead and pull it up because I want to do this justice. It basically has Brad Pitt as a warrior from one of the movies he was in. I think it was the one with Greece or Troy, and then it has a picture of Jesus. And that's like, in fact, I'm pulling it up here. Ugh, feeling kind of nervous because I don't want to read the thing. So, Okay, so she's continuing to argue. Didn't like. Okay, anyways, we'll talk about that. But let me look at the post. So the post has a picture of Brad Pitt. Imagine a king who fights his own battles. Wouldn't that be a sight? And then the bottom panel, and it's because it showed Brad Pitt as a king fighting his own battles, and that was the thing. Like he was the king in that story, and that was true. Then it said we have one, and it shows Jesus carrying a cross. And okay, so let's see. And then where's this one guy's response? He has a picture that says, the King James Version of the New Testament. The King James Version of the New Testament was completed in 1611 by 8 members of the Church of England. There were and still are no original texts to translate. The oldest manuscripts we have were written down hundreds of years after the last apostle died. There are over 8,000 of these old manuscripts with no two alike. The King James translators used none of these anyway. Instead, they edited previous translations to create a version that their king and parliament would approve. So, 21st century Christians believe the quote unquote Word of God is a book edited in the 17th century from 16th century translations of 8,000 contradictory copies of 4th century scrolls that claim to be copies of lost letters written in the 1st century. That's not faith, that's insanity. Now, I don't know how much of that is true. I've definitely heard that before. I mean, and again, that's one of those things where, like, before you're really trying to convince someone of something, you should do some diligence and be like, okay, is this true? And it's that burden of proof, and it often falls on not you or not me or not whoever the poster is. Like, people expect other people to do this. And that's what's nice about XApp. Or, back when it was Twitter, I started getting on there and, being able to discuss things with people all around the world and be like, all right, so religion and politics, the two things we really shouldn't discuss in polite company because it upsets people. So, but you need to do it. It's like untangling a bunch of cords. If you just go in there ripping the cords out, they're gonna break. You're gonna ruin things. It's gonna, it's bad. It damages what you're trying to, carefully. And any person that's worked with tech, which is now pretty much everybody, unless you're Amish, but Amish are in one of those undiscovered tribes. But honestly, everywhere I've traveled, like tech is just as prevalent as it is here. I mean, in English too. Unfortunately, that's the bittersweet part. But the thing is like the whole world is kind of seeing, oh, this is what all those crazy Americans are all about. Like, because we do look absolutely insane compared to other people around the world because all they have to go off of is like, oh, America bombed this country today. Oh, America dropped bombs over here today. And like, same with Russia too. Like, Russia doesn't have a whole lot of like great publicity going on. I don't know. But like, oh, one of their politicians got murdered in jail. Like, there was elections and however you spin that and, what have you. Same with China too. Like they still have a tight grip over censorship, and it's just ridiculous. Like I mean, not to bash on China, it's just like I disagree with the way that they run their country, just in that censorship part. Now I get it. There's a lot of messed up stuff out there on the internet. I've seen some things where it's just like I could have gone my whole life. Thankfully, not like anything. There's these one things I had some coworkers try to tell me about, and I'm not even gonna say it because I don't want you to accidentally look it up. Like it's just these things where it's just like people enduring tortures just for the sake of shock value. And it's like, why? Why? And, well, there's your answer. It's because it gets views. And that's the dangerous thing. That's what I like about YouTube is stuff like that you can't do. You can't have stuff like that on YouTube. Right? At least you have to at least have an 18-year up filter. And I really need... I'm glad I realized that sooner rather than later because there's a lot of videos where I didn't think, oh yeah, no, kids aren't going to see this. But then realizing no, most of YouTube is made up of kids that have free reign of an account without understanding the full potential, which it's good and bad. Like it's bad. I feel sad for the kids that lose their innocence so young, but then at the same time, they're not going to be getting lied to nearly as much. I mean, in the sense that they're going to be able to understand more of what's going on in the world rather than taking someone's word for it. That's the big thing with Christianity and religion. In fact, after this video, I'm going to talk to this lady again, but let's go back and say what she said. So I just read the meme. It was like, wouldn't it be great if we had a king that fights for his own kingdom or whatever? Like, we have one, and it's Jesus, supposedly. Well, fought, past tense. Because that's where a lot of people that I know have a hard time with Christianity is because a lot of people will say that Jesus is still here. He's still like meddling with things. He's still doing things. He's all around us, and it's that accountability piece that I get it, like the reason for it, like it makes sense on paper, like, hey, let's try to ensure that, People will do the right thing even when nobody's around. Like, will they still follow the word of God? I mean, well, maybe not, but let's make sure they do. Let's just say God's always watching, like he's just peeping out at you from behind the bushes, like, which, and I even said this as a reply to this lady, is like, the neat thing about the world in today, which is also scary, but almost everything is trackable, like everything is traceable. I mean, you thought it was bad before with like the secret like little pictures and like microfilm and all that. No, we've got traffic cameras on every corner. We've got internet. Even no matter how encrypted you can make something, it can always be decrypted. That's the nature of encryption. So governments probably already know what you're talking about and doing, and the dark web, don't even. Like, I mean, if you've ever wanted to try to find stuff on the dark web, just don't. I mean, if you're trying to experiment with substances outside your current or your local laws, first off, wait until you're older. Like, high school age is still a little young. I knew people that started smoking cannabis as early as like elementary school age, and that's just really sad, and that's not cool. Like, I don't really want that ever being a thing, but at the same end, and it's that whole swept under the rug rather than addressing something. Like, I mean, we need to not treat kids like adults, but at the same time, not treat them like they can't handle some harsh truths too. Like, I don't know, like the religion thing, I feel like they should really teach it more like, we haven't heard from God for a while. Like, I mean, we can see miracles, and we can see things that maybe infer, and that's what this lady just responded, and we'll get to that in a second here. Let's see where we're at. Geez, yeah, we're already over halfway of this episode, but because it is neat. I mean, and in no way, like, I think we can still be saying things, and we're kind of disarming and taking, at least I'm trying, to take the emotion out of these such discussions. But she's still a little on the defensive side. I don't think she read my whole thing before responding. She sent me quite the book, a very long response. So, anyways, uh, sorry, I'm trying to think about. Okay, well, let's just say what her story was. So she talked about in great excruciating detail. She went to a yard sale. I think it's some older lady, like some like grandma or someone's, whatever, nana, that is going to be a little harder to convince, but at the same time, like, I think we can say that we're saying the same thing, basically. Like, it's not wrong. It's not mutually exclusive. There you go. Just because I don't think Jesus was like the actual God doesn't mean that there isn't a God up there somewhere. I think it's a lot less likely, but, you know, and who knows? Maybe Jesus was. I don't know. That's a pretty big if, though. And like that one guy's little picture there says, like, and again, I'd like to fact check that. Just how many times the Bible has been translated in different languages, different times, like all of this, and then it was like severely edited by the King James era and by that king. So, and I think that's why a lot of it is like male centric. Like, women were constantly looked down upon, witches, and like they needed to know their place. They were far too emotional to be rational, or whatever the nonsensical reasons they were for being oppressed over the years. And current day Sharia law with a bunch of Islamic areas, I mean, which is just now getting rolled back. Like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is starting to realize, hey, we can protect our women, but also allow them the freedoms that American women enjoy, like the first female concert. I mean, they see T Swift flying around doing all these concerts, earning billions of dollars, and they're suddenly thinking, I mean, it's nice that people aren't looking at my body in an objectifying way, but at the same time, I could have million. I mean, you got to keep it in reality, but like, still, just like everybody should have an equal opportunity to go do great things like that. I mean, T Swift is a little too great. She needs to rein it in, and I know she gives a lot of money to charities and stuff, so I mean, it's okay. But at the same time, it's like no one human should ever have that much money. I mean, if anything, after a certain point, they should just be able to decide where the extra money goes to. I mean, so yeah, but it should really still be a pull versus push. Like, you should let them decide when and where they want to do it, and then trust that they'll do it. I think that's the whole thing that's missing from the golden model or the golden rule. Treat others as you would like to be treated. Expect nothing in return, and trust them to do the same or to do similar. Like, because when it gets right down to it, everybody, if they knew they were messing up or like disrespecting people or how severe it was, then almost every single time, it might take them a while. They might, like, in the moment just be like argumentative, like, no, I wasn't, they're overreacting or whatever. But almost every single person That's what you find out through a lot of therapy, relationship counseling, stuff like that. Almost every single person will be like, you know what, I was wrong. It might take a day, a week, a month, a year, a decade, but almost always the story goes that the person, the guilt eats at them, or they just are thinking about it, and then they're like, okay, I need to apologize for this. This was not right. I see what this was. I mean, because it's just human nature. Like, I mean, even if it wasn't even how we saw it, we would still feel bad because it's like, well, it doesn't matter. Like a car crash, that's my favorite example. Like nobody intends a car crash to happen, but yet it happens. I mean, so then what do you do? You know? So it's not like like accidents are only valid excuses for so long. Anyways, so this lady's story. So she was going to a yard sale. She got blinded by something. She did a U-turn without being able to see. So she kind of admitted that she did a dangerous maneuver in a neighborhood that just had a yard sale that could have kids running around. So like it's kind of almost like, oof, you should watch how you're driving. Like don't let Jesus take the wheel too much. I mean, but she flipped a U-turn even though she couldn't see, and she even described it like that. Like I know she's just trying to be helpful and tell a very convincing story of how she thought that God interacted with her directly. But she said she saw a doorway of light and it was moving. And so now we're starting to sound like, I mean, alien visitors, or which could totally be a thing too, ancient aliens. Like I think it's a very, oh, let's talk about that real quick too. Ancient aliens. Well, after the story, so she sees a doorway of about 10 feet wide, 15 feet tall, rectangular, um, same height or same width on the top as the bottom, and just a doorway of light moving, so like a portal or something. And and that was it. And then it closed. That was the whole story. Like, I mean, it wasn't like Jesus poked his head out of it, like, "Hey, believe in me," like or anything, any single mention or inference. She just connected dots. Now that totally sounds like a UFO. I mean, if you, I don't know, like it sounds like a UFO story, and like it doesn't even like, and that doesn't have to mean aliens. That could just be like higher dimensional beings that how we can't see in certain wavelengths. They could be in the room with me right now. But no, you can't live your life like that. Like then you're overly paranoid. It's just no way to live. But I was reading something else that our vision and our hearing can only register certain frequencies, and anything outside those ranges is invisible to us. Like think of dog whistle. There's an entire frequency that we can't hear that drives dogs nuts because they can, and it's hurtful. Like I mean, I don't think anybody like I can sometimes joke about getting a dog whistle when there's a dog being loud in an apartment around me, but I don't think I'd ever really do it because I feel like it's painful to them, or like especially if you're blasting that thing. I don't know, but anyways, there's a possibility. So she said that, and then and so I sent a very lengthy reply back, which I don't think she read it. Like I think she just defensively said, "No, Jesus does exist," because I heard the story. Like okay, so a door opened, and like that sounds really, and I'm not saying I don't believe you. I'm just saying like what's the relevance? What does that mean? Like she even said stuff like Mr. Know-it-all. You think there's no God? Like let me tell you a story. I saw a door open up in the sky. Like okay, well that's okay, but that doesn't prove that Jesus was a God back when he was alive, if he was even alive. Could just be a folk tale, a legend, and that's what I said in my reply. I was like, basically we need to deal with things that are provable that we can see, otherwise they're up for interpretation. Like they could be misunderstood, misguided. Like I mean, and we see a bunch of examples of this, like when Bender becomes God, like a bunch of Simpsons stuff like that. Let's see. Hmm. Trying to think like where else could we. There we go. So I'm starting to make this. Yeah. And like the idea that if there are ghosts and spirits, I like to think that they can at least see these YouTube videos posted online. Or maybe they don't have it. Maybe they catch them in transmission from here to there. Or maybe they can get into this game. I don't know. Or maybe, yeah, maybe they can exist in here. Although this doesn't persist once I close it. It saves the state and then it reopens it from the state. But maybe they have a device up there that can, and the Ancient Aliens, sorry, let's talk about that real quick. So if you watch Ancient Aliens, the first season, that's all I've seen. It's very good. But it starts to get a little redundant. But anyways, one of the guys on there, he does that. He translates Bibles into other languages. And so that was just a lot of his life's work. And he did so much of that where he was just like, okay, I'm starting to see different connecting dots here. Like, I'm starting to think other explanations might make sense. And I don't want to, take from their profit or anything, but like the basic idea was is like there's a lot of evidence that could point to life on Earth being kind of like an experiment, like we were bred like animals, like kind of like how we're breeding animals now, like or genetically GMOs, which a lot of people think that's some like really scary thing, but genetically modified organisms doesn't necessarily mean that they were injected with some kind of like super buff steroids or something. No, it could be that like natives and their corn and the corn that they grew for a long time, and then what is it like that glass bead or like that? There's a name for it, and it looks really cool, and there's a bunch of colors in the corn. But how we took it and we continued, like bananas too, but we continued to find our favorite ears of corn and then combine them or only harvest the best and then continue to plant the best and then let other kind of species and strains die off. Same with like cannabis too. I mean, like there's such a science to that, like all the different strains and combinations and like all of this stuff. And it's just basically like crop science or like gardening and like farming and stuff. So that's what a lot of GMOs are. Now, not to say that there aren't. There's also like pesticide treated stuff, and there's different other ways that it could be hazardous, and yeah. And then that whole thing, like I can see the argument of both sides. It's like, people would have to spend a fortune trying to label things. There's a lot of legal liability. Like legal liability, I think is one of the biggest things. It's just like if we were to get rid of one thing, like just make it to where, or at least like make the penalties not so insane. Like that is one thing that I do kind of think is just ridiculous for Trump doing all this stuff. Is like, what was it like 80 million for? Um, not saying that it was right and like he should have gotten away with it, but like 80 million. Can you imagine? Like, and then there's some people that like, oh, like sorry, we're talking about like sex crimes and stuff, and sex offenses. Like there's there's several stories of black gentlemen in prison for years before it's found out, oh wait, no, they didn't actually commit a sex crime. It's like, wait, what? Where's their 80 million? And some might from the state get something like that, but like, and that's someone that spent time in prison for false imprisonment for something like that. And and like, and Trump, yeah, he sexually assaulted a lot of people, I'm sure. I mean, when you give like the actual, I don't know, sexual assault, you gotta be really careful with, especially with drinking, because like it's almost like, oof. Well, and drinking in general too. Like I feel like if drinking just kind of like petered out a little bit, like didn't, like phased away. The same with tobacco, cigarettes, and chewing and stuff. That's gonna start phasing out if beer starts phasing out. I mean, if you relax after a hard day's work with something else, like I don't know. That's just my thinking, and that's why I think it's very important in some of the side projects that I do, like when I try to convince China to legalize weed. It's like not trying very hard, mind you, not trying to be offensive when doing it. It's just casually slipping in there, be like, oh hey, but here's some statistics about cannabis and how great it's going for Colorado, and oh look, and now we've got mushrooms and DMT, and like we're gonna be taking care of a lot of our PTSD now. Ultimately, because I mean the whole selling point for that was it would cure the PTSD or at least treat it of soldiers, like soldiers that are just ruined from like taking someone's life, battle, combat. It's very harsh living, and there's a lot of suicide from veterans and soldiers, and a lot of our homeless population, or people that start to experience some homelessness there, are often vets. So I mean, there's some kind of mental issue going on there, and you know, which we're getting better about. Like we're learning what works, what doesn't work, what people need to be treated with. Like it doesn't need to be all like lock them up in prison, although a lot of it still is. But I mean, starting to see like, oh, well, and even with substance abuse, like a lot of it stems from either feelings of unfairness or like either real or perceived. Like, and we know that the Nixon um, campaign was to target black and hippie neighborhoods with drugs, and the war on drugs was a tool to attack and target voters. Like, oh, people don't like the war. People want to be a bunch of hippies and like protesting this war and whatever. How rude! We're gonna make weed illegal. Not just illegal, it is the most dangerous drug. Reefer Madness. They did a whole campaign, and it's almost like anybody that had ever used it is probably like looking at it like, wait, what? No. Now, a lot of people had music that were like, oh my gosh, you know. And there was cocaine in there too. Like if you did cocaine, you were gonna like sleep with African American jazz musicians. Like, or your white women daughters or wives would go hook up with jazz musicians or something. It's like you gotta think about like if I was a jazz musician at that time with a darker skin color, like how messed up would that be? Like, oh man, you know. And that's a lot of our racism started from reefer madness. So, anyways, all right. So I'm gonna. There's the alarm. I'm gonna go back, read what she responded with. Ask her to read my response again. Like, I don't think you read it because, like, first she starts off, no, I've seen Jesus. I've seen Jesus here, and she started to tell a story like, I've seen Jesus all my life. Like, okay, okay, but him? Did he say like, hey, by the way, my name is Jesus. Here's my business card. Like, it could have been complete luck. It could have been a real God or creator. Like, whatever. Or it could have been Jesus. I don't know. That's the fact that I'm trying to drive home with these people is we don't know. So therefore, we need to be careful about what could be carried out in the name of a misunderstanding, perhaps. Oh, geez. I was about to say that's gonna catch up the lag of that. I mean, and just like, okay, one last thing before we go. Homosexuality in the Bible, like I think a lot of that needs to be chalked up to the relevancy, like a relevancy score of it, because it is mentioned in the Bible, a man shall not lay with another man lest he be stoned. So stoned, killed for it, or like, you know, and what about a woman and a woman? Like, and see, that's where it's like, you know, it's kind of wishy-washy, and it's only like the one mention that I know of. I mean, it says something about the Sodomites, but at the same time, Sodomites also, I've heard people say, well, no, that referred to this kingdom over here. Didn't necessarily means that they all partook in sodomy. It was just this kingdom for other reasons. Like, there could have been like, you know, they're evil because of this, not because they do this. And so, anyways, that's quite a bit there. Sorry for any little ears, but ta-ta for now. I'll see you in the next one. I might switch over to Dark Souls. I just wanted to do one, maybe two of these where I could actually focus and get those musings out. Because in Dark Souls, I'm going to get very distracted, and I'm excited because I think someone mentioned where to find some more magic, and that's what I need to get through this next area that I'm stuck on. So we shall see. So ta-ta for now. Just be kind to each other. All right, see you in the next one.